Thanks.
Okay. Next up, we have Superintendent's comments. Ms. Hamburg.
Thank you. I shared a slide with the board members because I know you can't see the screen. And I can't see the screen to see if it's up there yet. Jennifer's getting it. There we go. So for the sake of time, because we had two awesome presentations tonight, and I do want to take just a moment to thank Mark Cooper, Matt Meisner, Kate Toma for all of the information they shared. We've had a lot going on, obviously, this fall, and sometimes we take for granted that we know all this work is happening, but I think it's really important that we take time to share it with the board, because really the stuff that we talked about tonight is a huge volume of what we do on a daily basis. This is our core work, so there's a lot, we have our ballot issue going on. There's a lot of noise around that, and so sometimes it's easy to get distracted and forget that all this great work is happening every single day. And so I want to thank them for sharing it, but more importantly, I know we have a lot of folks here. I see some of our curriculum specialists and coaches and teachers, and so I just really appreciate all the work that what they just summarized in that amount of time doesn't begin to scratch the surface of all the work that's going on to make that happen. So thank you to all of you who are here tonight that are really doing the true work with the kids to make that happen. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to share at the last meeting, Mrs. Meyer, you had requested that we kind of review again those reductions that we had talked about. And so just wanted to pull that slide back up. And we're talking about the $20 million that we will need to reduce if we're not successful on the ballot issue. And I'll just kind of run through this list and remind you of kind of what is in each of these areas. So the first area is the co and extracurriculars. This one is a little unique from the other items because it would be about adding revenue in versus reducing costs. And so we would be looking at, again, increasing our pay to participate fees for our middle schoolers to $350, our high schoolers to $500 per sport. Our activity fee would go to $50 for high school, $25 for middle school. And again, we currently have a cap on our sports. We would eliminate that family cap, and we would anticipate that we would have about a $1.3 million swing in the deficit through the revenues that we would be able to raise there. We have looked at, we would sadly anticipate there would be a drop off in participation. We know that those increased fees would create barriers for kids and families, and so we would anticipate, based on what we saw the last time we had to raise fees up, we would anticipate about a 25% drop off in the participation levels for those sports. Next, we have transportation. And with the transportation, and Mrs. Dennis and her team have looked at what that would look like with reducing some routes. We know we're already running at a shortage. We're already struggling to staff those, but we think we would be able to reduce at least 14 routes through some changes in transportation zones and eligibility, and that would save us about $1 million. The bulk of our savings would be in staffing. We are a service industry, and the majority of our expenses go to all the people that work with our kids, and so obviously that do all the work that we were just talking about. So to kind of go through that $12.3 million, we would be looking at, and these are estimates of positions. We would try to do as few as possible depending on the actual numbers. One of the things we talked about last time, we've seen a lot of changes in the state teachers retirement system requirements. So they dropped last spring from 33 years down to 32. If we see an additional decrease there, that could impact the number of people who choose to retire because they're suddenly eligible. We know people at the higher end of the pay scale, it's usually about 2 brand new teachers would equal 1 person at the end of their career. Obviously, as somebody works throughout their entire career, they make more. So with that, we're looking at around 10 positions administratively, and this is in addition to the 33 total positions we've already eliminated at a district level after the last levy failure. 7 of those were administrative, so 10 additional ones. 64 at the elementary level. That would be looking again at our art, music, physical education, and library, because those are not required to be offered at that level. We would also recommend looking at our magnet programs and reducing the overall length of the student day so that we could give our core classroom teachers their plan time outside of the student day, because they wouldn't be able to have their plan time during the specials period. At the middle school, we would be looking at around 31 positions. We would look at eliminating teaming at the 6th grade level, which would pick up some of our core classes, and then also looking at those elective classes. I would just note at the middle school, with last year's budget bill that passed, that we are no longer able to have a waiver for career courses that we offer at the middle school. So in the past, we didn't need to worry about the waiver because we were offering those exploration classes for our pathways. But now we would be required to offer at least one of those at the 7th grade level and one at the 8th grade level. So what we're talking about there would be like our engineering and our health pathways medical detectives course. We would probably still offer those, but we wouldn't have to offer all of our other elective courses at the middle school. And again, we would look at a reduced student day. So previously, when we had levy failures back in 2011, 2012 timeframe, my understanding is we had middle schoolers sitting in study halls for multiple periods. That becomes a discipline nightmare, and I would not recommend that. I would recommend shortening the day, and again, giving the staff members their plan time outside of the student day. At the high school, we're not able to reduce as many at that level as the other 2 levels due to graduation requirements and college requirements. But we would be looking at around 19 positions. Again, by making bigger class sizes, we would do that through having less offerings. Right now, we have very robust course offerings, which we're very proud of. We talked a lot about that tonight with our AP, our IB, our College Credit Plus offerings on campus. We would look at reducing those offerings so that we could maximize class sizes across our 3 high schools. And again, we would not need to offer the CCP on campus, which would be a savings of the money that we're paying to Columbus State to do that. And it would also, we would look at library, which is not required at that level either. Throughout the district, other positions that we would look at more at a district level are people that are serving multiple buildings. We would look at gifted, specialized learning services, curriculum and instruction, student services, technology, human resources, our fiscal office, custodial, and maintenance staff. And so across all of those areas, we're looking at about 124 positions, and that would be 12.3 million is what we're estimating. Again, that would vary depending on the actual positions. And then we look at other items to get to our 20 million. We would be looking at the complete elimination of summer school. We've already reduced that after the ESSER funds expired. The ESSER funds, as a reminder, were the COVID dollars that we received that helped us to expand that to help with learning loss. We would look at reducing some contracted services across the district, eliminating field trips, eliminating all-day kindergarten. As a reminder, half-day kindergarten is the required model. We currently offer a tuition-based all-day kindergarten, but the tuition does not cover the whole cost of all-day kindergarten. So as Nicole ran those numbers and we looked at it, that would be an area that we would recommend eliminating. We would eliminate or greatly reduce overtime. Right now, where we have staffing shortages, we're able to utilize overtime, for example, with the custodial services. If we don't have enough custodians, we're able to pay employees overtime, which obviously costs more to get that cleaning done. So we would look at reducing cleaning schedules to minimums. We would look at increasing student fees, increasing facility rental fees. We've tried to keep those fees really low, especially for community groups that are based in our school district. We would look at increasing those. And then finally, we would look at supplemental contracts. So when we talked about the first item with pay to participate, we were talking about increasing revenue, but we would also look at areas where we have low participation or lower participation, eliminating some of those supplemental contracts. We also have additional supplemental contracts that are not necessarily for clubs and activities or sports, but are to accomplish different types of work throughout the school day that we would look at eliminating. So that would be additional 5.4 million, and that would put us at the 20 million that we would be recommending to the board if we're not successful next week. I'm happy to, Nicole, did I miss anything that you want to add?
No, I think so. Just a reminder that some of those positions that Angie talked about Mrs. Hamburg talked about eliminating would result in larger class sizes overall because of the fewer offerings and what's available. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. Have we thought about, when we say shorten the school day, about how much shorter would it get?
I would guess probably about an hour, but we haven't drilled completely down into that.
Okay. I was just thinking, as a mom, if I was a elementary mom, working mom and working parents, I'd have to get additional daycare. And so I'm assuming the YCA would then also shift too, potentially?
So I've had some initial conversations with them. I would assume if they're picking up additional time, there would probably be a cost. But, we're waiting to see if that's something that and again, all this would go into effect for next school year. So if we're not successful next week, those would be the types of conversations that we would kind of flesh out the details as we move through the next few months. I think they would be able to do that. It's just a matter of what the additional cost would be for families. But if we eliminate teachers and still keep the kids for the same amount of time without having a place, so what was done previously was there were study hall monitors added to watch them. And again, when kids don't even have that much homework to do for 3 hours worth of study hall, I just don't educationally recommend that.
Just as a reminder, something I've been hearing a lot about out in the community as I'm talking to people is, could you just remind us how long it took to bring back some of that middle school programming? And, I even heard this week that by a parent of a student who was in music, how they felt that it wasn't even fully back to normal from the past failures.
Yeah, that the high school levels are even obviously impacted when we don't have those opportunities at the younger levels. Obviously I wasn't here, but Scott Reeves and Ann Baldwin and some of the other folks have given me a lot of that history, Matt Meisner. So when we eliminated all of those opportunities, middle school was hit particularly hard the last time back in the 2011, 2012. And really it's only been within the last few years that they've really gotten those programs back to where we wanted them to be, and it was done very strategically. So one of the criticisms that I've heard a lot is, why have we added staff when our enrollment has decreased? And one of the assumptions there is that you had the right staff to begin with. And so our staffing was low after all those reductions were made. And when Minerva Park was open, that is when we finally were able to add back and actually have the elective courses to give our kids that experience and that well-rounded education that we're trying to give them. So, we know that as a former middle school principal, I can tell you, and I taught 9th grade English primarily, and I got excited to get up in the morning to go to English class, but, a lot of kids, that's not what they get excited about in middle school. So we know that just having language arts, math, science, and social studies for our kids is not really giving them that full experience and that full exposure. And so as we added back in the music, the art, the PE, we also were able to add in those career exploration pathway courses with medical detectives and the engineering, and then add another year of engineering. So I think the program that we have right now is very exciting for our middle schoolers. It was done strategically, and it really just got fully developed out over the last few years from the last time we had to make cuts. And again, as we talk about the staffing ads that were made over the last few years, there are a few main areas. Mark talked about the special education ads that we've made because of that growing population. But from a general education standpoint, one of the main areas we've added is middle school, and that wasn't an ad because we were just trying to layer on programs. That was trying to build back what we had lost previously.
I'm related to middle school, so I unfortunately remember all of that and going through that. One of the things that was really fought for by teachers and others in the district was the teaming, which you kind of mentioned, but I'm not sure everybody knows what that is. If you haven't had a 6th grader, who's in teaming, so can you just give the brief primer on teaming?
Yes, so teaming is when, and it's usually at the middle school level, but it can be at other levels. Kids are put onto a team, so a group of teachers, typically one from each of the content areas, they all have the same kids. So instead of kids being scheduled more in like a junior high or high school model where they're just all across and different teachers have different kids, you get put almost like in a pod where this 100 kids is with the same teachers, and then they can meet and look at the kids and really drill down and be more strategic about what their day looks like, where they need assistance. It feeds into this MTSS model really well. And then they have a flex period. So during that flex time, instead of having like a study hall, it's a more targeted period where they can get assistance, they can drill into what each kid really needs, and they're able to do that when they just share a smaller group of kids instead of just having kids spread across the building.
Yeah, thank you for talking that through. It does really dovetail well with MTSS. I think, what historically in this district we saw was there was a real need for better transition from 5th to 6th grade.
Yes.
Right? 6th graders are pretty young academically. Their curriculum is a little more like 5th grade than maybe like 7th or 8th grade.
And that's a huge transition for them to go from an elementary model to feeling what was more like a junior high. Without the teaming, it's really a junior high. The teaming is what makes it middle school. It makes it where we're really keeping them in smaller areas and really looking at their individual needs and having those conversations. And I know our middle schools have wanted to add teaming at 7th and 8th grade. And we've just been trying with our staffing levels to maintain what we have at 6th grade for now. I mean, our ultimate goal, and I mentioned I was a middle school principal, I'm a huge proponent of teaming when it's done right. I would love to see us have teaming across the entire middle school. I think it can really make a very robust experience, and it fits into everything that Ms. Toma was talking about with how we get in and really try to dig in and look at where the kids are and get them the interventions they need. It builds that time into the day so that one of the challenges with MTSS at middle and high school is the structure of the day. And so when we have teaming already in place, it kind of puts those structures where we're really ready to jump right into MTSS.
Thanks for digging into that. Just want everyone to understand when you said that, what that really meant.
Just real briefly, if we were to have to undergo these deficit reductions, what would that mean at a macro level for what we just heard about MTSS? We're talking about losing some teacher time. Can you sort of just, would we visualize, well, we wouldn't be able to do much for 2 or 3 years? Would it be like back to year 0? What does that really look like if we couldn't advance MTSS because of the staffing reductions and things that would have to be undertaken?
Great question. I think we'd approach it from a triage level. We've talked about there would be some reductions in the number of coaches that we have. I would really encourage you. I know Kate invited you to come into a district MTSS meeting. If you're able to do that, I think it would be a great experience. It always fills my bucket just to see the work that they're doing. The coaches that they've hired are just really bought into the work and so positive, and it's just super exciting to see. So I would hate to see those, and part of what makes it work, and I'm a huge proponent of coaching as well, again, when it's done right, is when you have a coach that's in a building and they know that staff and they are able to get in and build relationships and then help teachers. I think everybody can benefit from coaching, whether you're a brand new first-year teacher or a highly successful veteran teacher. It's just having that thought partner to come in and help you in your classroom, to help you when you're struggling with kids. And so trying to share those positions, and I've been in situations previously in my career where those are shared across multiple buildings. It's very hard because they just don't have the relationships. So they're basically just coming in and trying to run those meetings where they're looking at data, but they don't know the kids, they don't know the teachers. And so I think it would be a huge setback in the work that we're trying to do. And we would struggle with having the staff available to provide interventions, because right now we've worked really hard to try to free up periods, especially at the secondary level, for people to be able to do that. And without those supports in place, it would be really hard to move that work forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.